Old Tucson owners are gearing up to reopen the film studio and amusement park. Managers say the Southern Arizona landmark will be bigger and better this time around. And as Celeste Gonzalez tells us, they're doing what they can to make the park safer.
Directors aren't shouting lights and camera at Old Tucson these days. But there's plenty of action going on.
Oh, you guys are done.
Was that too hard?
No, that was good.
That sounded good.
That was good. It sounded good.
Reopening day is just over a month away. From construction crews to carousel creators, everyone at the park seems to be on a mission. Bob Keniston is general manager of Old Tucson Studios.
And this is an example of what we're doing to make sure that we create that genuineness.
Keniston became GM about a month before the infamous fire of April 1995. The inferno destroyed 40% of the buildings at the park and all of the film studio's props and wardrobe. The fire was so intense that for safety reasons, those battling the blaze were forced to take a defensive stance and watch many of the structures burn.
We've got Tucson Fire, Rural Metro, Drexel Heights, Tucson Estates, Pasquayaki, Davis-Monthan, South Tucson, Northwest Fire District. I think every fire department in the valley is here.
Today, new buildings are going up in place of the old, from a new hotel to the barbecue food service area.
This is not a bad siding job. This is 100-year-old barnwood from Utah, which went to Idaho to get sliced up, which went to Flagstaff, which we then purchased and brought down here. This was actually from a railroad trestle from the 1890s. So this is exactly the type of wood from our genre which we're trying to portray.
Building brand new structures to appear as if they've been here for the past century is one of the greatest challenges for those working at the park.
From the Bells of St. Mary's to the movie Tombstone, we have had productions filmed in this area with the vistas of the Tucson Mountains in the background.
Although the weathered walls of this mission depict a different story, the building is just a month old. The only thing that remains from the original structure is the bell. It's hard to believe the town hall is just weeks old.
And then the walls are going to have a glaze.
Varnish.
Siobhan Room is the art director for this project. She went to the Tombstone Courthouse to map out just how the inside of the town hall should look.
Research is important because it needs to have some historical accuracy, and of course the set as well. So it's got to work with the script and the design. Of course, my background's in architecture and set design. The design and detailing is important too.
Sure.
Lee Ross is working to change the new appearance of what will be an 1890s-style ice cream parlor.
We start with material called wheat paste, which is used in wall covering and wallpapering and stuff as an adhesive. And it's kind of a trick. You just put it on here and there where you want the paint to pop off easier.
Once the paint dries, Ross begins the aging process using water and a high-pressure sprayer. Within seconds, the paint chips away, and within minutes, you've got a 25-year-old paint job. The cost of rebuilding this famous Southern Arizona landmark is tremendous, about $13 million, which brings about a question many are asking. How much of a role is the safety playing in the rebuilding?
Safety is a very, very important part of the rebuilding of Old Tucson. We have included many insurance companies, underwriters, and most importantly, the State Fire Marshal's office out of Phoenix, as well as the local representatives here in Tucson, who have been a member of our team when we were just in early concept phase, and they have assisted us as we've gone through the building process.
Crews are installing sprinklers in all of the new buildings, and many of the old structures are being retrofitted. 7 new fire hydrants now surround the park. There is also more water on site in case of a fire.
We had, at the time of the fire, 70,000 gallons that was dedicated to both fire suppression, and domestic use. Now, today, we have 200,000 gallons of water dedicated solely to fire protection.
But construction isn't the only kind of building going on. Entertainers are busy working on their shows. Fernando Romero worked at Old Tucson before the fire. He's back and helping to train some of the stunt people.
It's just great to be back. It's been a long time waiting, and it's good to come out and see a whole, you know, fresh new faces out here and new management, and everything's just going really good. Good positive attitude out here. It's going to be really great.
Managers say the experience at Old Tucson will be different compared to what visitors had before. This time around, the park will entertain, edutain, as well as centertain.
If the walls could speak, they'd tell a million stories. Unfortunately, they can't. And what we want to do now is be the voice of those walls. Talk about all the things that have gone on and have been seen here by those walls over the ages. And what we want to do is be more interpretive for our guests. We want to be able to talk about what life was like in the 1860s to the 1890s from a people perspective.
Lau is in the newsroom now with more on the story. Tess?
Well, organizers say they hope to have that re-grand opening the first part of January. Right now, they're putting the finishing touches on the buildings, and the actors are fine-tuning their skits. You may remember last April, the majority of Old Tucson Studios went up in flames. It took firefighters a long time to get to the isolated movie sets, and there was also a shortage of water in the area. Investigators confirmed the fire was human-caused, but to this day, no suspects have been arrested. Since then, organizers have spent $13 million rebuilding the historic movie site. Tonight, the actors performed before the two college teams playing in the Copper Bowl. In a few weeks, these Western players will be acting in front of the general public. And as far as the fire preparation goes, management says they will be ready for that and any other fire-related issues.
We have fire hydrants throughout the park. We never had that before. We have 7 fire hydrants. We have about 200,000 gallons of water dedicated just for fire. And we have about 45,000 gallons dedicated just to domestic use. Prior to the fire, it was 70,000 gallons combined. So we have expanded our fire protection system.
We should hear in a couple of weeks the exact date of that re-grand opening. And as far as the actors and other employees go, management says they have a good mix of the old employees who chose to come back and some new employees learning from some of the veterans.
I know that place was really busy before the fire. Do you think they're ready for the flood of people wanting to come in now?
Well, before the fire, organizers estimated about 500,000 people visited Old Tucson every year, but they admit that place wasn't built to handle that type of foot traffic. But now with $13 million reinvested in the studios, they say 500,000 people will be a breeze.
Really? All right, Tess, thank you.
The part that wasn't damaged by the fire remains the same, but as we come north, we see now we have a meat market, and guess what they serve in the meat market here? And we now have a new Grand Palace Hotel and Saloon. Old Tucson getting ready to open its doors once again. Good evening, I'm Bud Foster.
And I'm Mindy Blake. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of News 13 at 5. It has a different feel out here. It's great, though. Some of the original buildings are still here just to the south of the town square, but they've really made an excellent attempt to make it look old.
Yes, they have, and now they have a big town square where they will have 4 shows every day, so it really should be a whole lot of fun out here.
And we want to take you back a bit. In 1995, it was in April of 1995, 40 buildings in Tucson, 40% of the buildings out here burned. That was 25 buildings here. And it's been a slow rebuilding process. It's done, but we take a look back now at the fire.
Let's do that.
April 24th, 1995. The fire burned for 7 hours. You could see the smoke for miles. It started inside a building near White Oaks, near the west end of the park. The first pictures of the fire came from tourists who at first thought it was part of the show until they were rushed out of the exits. More than 300 firefighters from 10 different agencies fought the flames, but several things worked against them. First, there wasn't enough water available to fight the fire. Add to that the fact that the buildings were made of wood and had no sprinkler systems. Flames destroyed 25 buildings, including some of the most well-known movie sets. It left Old Tucson looking like a ghost town. It didn't take local and federal arson detectives long to figure out it had been set intentionally. But to this day, no one has been arrested for the crime. Another thing that started right away was speculation about whether this was the end of Old Tucson. Obviously, it wasn't. Took more than a year and a half to rebuild Old Tucson, and there are exactly 16 new buildings, and it has a whole new look, but it looks great.
You know, and the night that the fire happened is a night we'll never forget, that huge plume of smoke over the Tucson mountains. And, you know, we were asking, when we were sitting on the set, we were wondering, well, why in the world is this thing going up so easily? Why can't they put any water on it? Well, it's because they didn't have any water. There was no sprinkler system, and there were no fire hydrants out here, but they've learned a very valuable lesson in the last year and a half, and Christine Hill shows us just exactly what they've learned.
With a flash of light, the set of The Stars was up in smoke. The day after, the investigation began. What happened and why couldn't the spread of flames be stopped? Some answers: only 3 buildings had sprinklers, and there were no on-site wells or hydrants. The nearest water was 5 miles away.
Before the fire, there were 2 water tanks which held about 70,000 gallons of water for drinking and firefighting. Well, things have changed. Now there are 3 big tanks just like this one, which hold 235,000 gallons of water.
Old Tucson has become an oasis in the desert. Now 190,000 gallons of water flow just for fire prevention.
It's a lot different now. Right now they have seven fully sprinklered buildings. We have, as you can see here, fire hydrants. We have fire hydrants scattered throughout the property.
In fact, there are 7 new fire hydrants. And if you look closely, old-looking buildings have some new additions. Sprinklers, both inside and out.
We have fire sprinkler systems outside the building to protect the outside as well as the inside. So if we have a fire in the area, they'll activate, suppress the fire before we ever get to the inside of the building.
Of the $13 million spent to renovate Old Tucson, a substantial part of that was spent on fire safety, according to Old Tucson officials. They're hoping that new measures can help the new Old Tucson survive any future flames. Christine Hill, News 13.
Let's hope they don't have any future flames out here. Now, for those of you who've been observant, you've probably seen some people walking around behind us, and you might think the park is open. It is not. Today's Employees Day. The families of all the employees got to come out and see what's new in Old Tucson.
And we'll talk about that a little more a little later. We have some people who have come back here, who were here before the fire. They've come back because they want to be part of this old, new Tucson.
It's a great tourist attraction, probably one of the finest, certainly, in the entire Southwest.
Yeah, I should say new Old Tucson.
Yes, it is.
All right, we'll have more from Old Tucson, but first back to you, Barbara, for all the day's news.